Ryan Johnston is the voice of the Boston Bruins on 98.5 The Sports Sub. Tonight, they host the very banged-up Florida Panthers, but Marchand will be back on the ice. Ryan, hello.
Morning, guys.
Good morning. So I know that the Bruins are not afraid of a tribute. They do it for far, far, far less more important players.
You got some extra material, Ryan, you could kill time with?
We're looking forward to seeing what they've got cooked up tonight because this is a big one. You know, I'm sure we'll have a few more during the course of this season. Brandon Carlo will visit, and Charlie Coyle will visit, and things like that. But this is a guy who should be destined to have his number in the rafters one day. You would think.
Oh, you would? I would assume so. But here we go. Crowd reaction? I have my own thoughts, but what do you think of the crowd? What the crowd reaction is going to be?
For the tribute or for
just for him in general? Take us through the ups and downs of the game.
Yeah, it'll be. I have to think it's going to be all love. I would hope people understand that Marchand not being here, I don't think is his fault. I don't really blame the organization either. It's they had two different directions that they needed to go, and he turned out to be right that there was a longer term contract out there and a better offer, and he goes down to Florida, he wins the Stanley Cup, and then he gets a 6-year deal at 37 years old. I don't think you can fault him for that, and so. This is one of those rare times where I think it was probably better for everybody that they parted ways. And I don't think that the fans will hold any ill will toward him. Now, once the game gets going, could be a totally different story because he's Brad Marchand and he's going to play like it. And with the emotions running high tonight, he'll be at his best, and that it will tend to include some things that'll piss off the opposing team.
I don't think that the Bruins are good enough for people to turn on Marchand tonight. I just think that
the fix is in. Paul Maurice is going to start him. They'll introduce him, and the crowd will go nuts.
But I just think that during the flow of the game, that if this was a team that people was going to challenge for a cup, and Florida was between them and the cup, emotions might be a little bit different. But this early in the season, with this particular Bruins team, who, by the way, need to pick up some wins against Florida while Florida doesn't have anyone. Because let's talk about that. Florida is very shorthanded right now, aren't they?
Yeah, so their captain, Alexander Barkov, is going to miss the season. Just an unfortunate knee injury in training camp during a practice. Matthew Tkachuk is sidelined for a decent chunk of the season. I think he's not going to be back at least until it sounds like December, maybe January. They're also missing Tomas Nosek. They're missing Dmitry Kulikov, defenseman, is going to be out long term. He just got hurt recently, so yeah, I mean they're hurting, and the Bruins. Listen, this is still a really good team. They still have Reinhart, they still have Verhaeghe, they still have Sam Bennett, they still have Sergei Bobrovsky, who's still one of the best goalies in the league. But you're right. Take advantage of them while you can. The Bruins are going to be in the same situation with Ottawa. They're going to play Ottawa 3 times while Brady Tkachuk's out for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And so, it's an opportunity to maybe steal some points where you might have trouble otherwise.
Yeah, it's just kind of a weird spot for Marchand because, of course, he's not going to trade the extra Stanley Cup for anything, and the opportunity ended up benefiting him. But now that the team, with everything you just said, Ryan, with who they still have in place and they're still a good team, it's got to be feeling different for him right now than it did certainly after the Cup win and even before the start of the season. That we probably don't have nearly the shot or any shot really at winning it again. And now I got to play against my former team and feel this thing is. I don't know if he's going to give him second thoughts, but he's probably going to be missing Boston a little bit more given the situation that Florida has right now than he would have had they had full health and they were legitimately looking at another cup run.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look, we'll see kind of how Florida looks tonight in total. They've lost 4 in a row after they won their first 3. They had a 3-game homestand to start the season. Won them all, and then they went on the road, and I think they've scored 4 total goals in the last 4 games got shut out by Buffalo on Saturday afternoon. If you saw it, by the way, if you saw any of the highlights of that, Marchand got a $5,000 fine for ripping Rasmus Dahlin's helmet to shreds, throwing it out on the ice from the penalty box.
Yeah, we saw that.
So he's been on his best behavior. Good to see. Yeah, so there, listen, I think from their perspective, they could really use a win tonight. I would imagine that they're looking to ride some of the emotion that Marchand will have this evening, and maybe that injects a little bit of extra life into their team. But listen, I think you tend to see it with defending champions, whether they're injured or not. The start of the next season, they've had a shorter off season than most. It sometimes will take them a little while to get going. And, and it certainly doesn't help when you're missing players the caliber of Tkachuk and Barkov to try and get your team off to a good start. But I think, at the end of the season, Florida's still going to be very much in the mix. And, Paul Maurice is one of the best coaches in the league. They've won back-to-back cups for a reason. They've got an incredible nucleus there, even without Barkov. If he ends up missing the entirety of the playoffs, who knows what they'll have at that point when you get through all 82 games. But they're very much going to be pushing for a third straight cup, Barkov or no.
Ryan, another team that won its first 3 games and lost their last 4 are the Bruins. Can you explain what happened to them on this last road trip, especially on the defensive end?
Yeah, the first 2 games of that road trip especially, you're playing Vegas and Colorado they're phenomenal teams. And I said this on the air the other day. Colorado will be here on Saturday. Vegas will be in town later this year. If you get a chance to see those teams in person, do it. Because they play an incredible brand of hockey, and it's really fun to watch. It's not so much fun when you're rooting for the Bruins and you see at times, a guy like Cale Makar skating circles around players, but it's really something. That said, the Bruins didn't stay committed to their defensive structure. We saw it some in the game here on Monday against Tampa Bay, especially in the first half of that game. Tampa was able to move the puck through the neutral zone with speed and get the offensive blue line and really kind of get things going off the rush. And we saw a lot of that against Vegas and against Colorado as well. Nathan McKinnon, they could not slow him down. And Marco Sturm was not happy about the way that they approached it. They're not built to play run and gun with that team or really any team. So, they've got to stay committed to that. We saw that through the first 3 games of this season. We haven't really seen it as much through much of the road trip. Now, they got better at it against Utah. Unfortunately, that game got away from them in the third period. But there was a much better effort, both offensively and defensively in that game. And then, offensively, listen, Marco Sturm, I give him credit. 6 games into his career as an NHL head coach, and against Colorado, he benched his top line for basically the last 12 minutes of that game. I think David Pastrnak skated like 10 seconds in the last 11 and a half minutes. Elias Lindholm didn't see the ice at all. Zacha got 1 shift. He was on the top line that night. Top 6 has not been good enough, and he has called them out for it. We saw the results of that effort on Sunday against Utah. Pasta ends up getting a couple of goals, but there's still some guys that really need to get going. Morgan Geekie is chief among them. Beersy talked about it on the broadcast on Sunday. Geekie's really just kind of fighting the puck right now. Things that we became accustomed to seeing him do, one-timers, him and Pasta with the connection that they had last year. The puck just seems to be exploding off his stick every time it comes at him. He had a one-timer attempt the other night that missed the net by a mile. It's just not there yet for him. And I went back and looked, and I think Ty Anderson had mentioned it on the hockey show on Saturday. Geekie, since he got to Boston, has been really slow in starting. I think last year he didn't score his first goal until almost mid-November. And then the year before that was kind of a similar thing. He got one early, I think, but really didn't get going until close to Thanksgiving. Now, hopefully it doesn't take that long. But, the fact that he didn't, he was a healthy scratch early in the season last year and didn't really get going until mid-November and still wound up with 30-plus goals. You just hope that, he finds his game sooner rather than later and gets back to the player that he showed he can be.
Brian, do you ever consider going to morning skate today and going down to ice level and waving Geeky over to the glass and just saying, "Hey, you're squeezing the stick." Just give him a from what you see from your perspective. That'd be appropriate, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think I'll probably leave Beersy to do that.
Yeah, okay.
Comes better from a former player.
I wouldn't be
it
so
was
sure
his
about
observation. I don't want to steal. I don't want to steal Beersy's thunder. He was the one who kind of pointed out that some of the Geeky struggles. So perhaps I'll leave it to him to do that.
You see things. You have thoughts. Share them.
And can I give you some advice? It's all about stealing someone's thunder. That's what it's all about, baby. Don't worry about stealing. You take that thunder, you make it your own. I'll tell you, Ryan's very nice. At the beginning of the season, he sends out an email and he's like, "I got tickets to these games, first come, first serve." But I got to tell you, Ryan, it's too much of a project at that point. You're putting a lot of dates out there. It's very difficult to navigate a calendar. I just threw my hands in the air. But I do appreciate it. I wanted you to know I do appreciate it. I never got back to it because it was a mass email. But I do appreciate it.
I do have some tickets, mostly later on in the season, for people like you who don't want to plan ahead too far. So always feel free to reach out. And if they're available, I'm more than happy to share.
Well, you're always very kind about that. I wanted to say something while I was thinking about it because I felt bad about not emailing back, but it was a mass email.
Well, you weren't the only one I didn't hear back from, so don't feel bad.
All right. Well, those people are worse than me because they haven't said anything, and now I have. All right, true. Ryan. Big game tonight. I would say that. I mean, a big early season game. I mean, this is a vulnerable Florida team that's lost 4 in a row like you. So you get in there, you get that win, and now you chalk one up against Florida, and, that helps you. All right, Ryan, thank you so much. Enjoy the game tonight.
Anytime, guys.